The travel home was really a blur, to be honest. As far as I can recall, I never expected that to happen. And as far as I can recall, it was just bright light. Something happened, and all I remember was seeing bright light. And I heard my husband, Carlos, say, "Let go." He said it in a way I can't really describe it, but that's my core memory of letting go. And then a bang. I didn't know what that was at that moment, but that's what I remember. I felt like every bit of my body was broken.
It's amazing how naturally our body has the capacity to heal. Actually, from such a young age when the accident happened, you would think that you see a child that is so fragile that you would think that just the resilience of how one can actually heal from that impact is amazing. So, but we're honored that you're here and you're here with us to share. So,
When I saw Z being pulled out of that wreck, you wouldn't think sa totoo lang na somebody would survive that. This one is for Ate Steph, di ba? Who or what became a crucial support system for you during those challenging times, and did their presence impact your healing process? I know nandyan yung mga kids sa support system mo, pero baka may mga iba pa.
About finding support, there were a lot of people who loved us. Most especially the parents, family, full support. Friends of friends, just because of the circumstances, sympathies were enormous. And I truly appreciated everything. But then again, going back to a lot of things I shared in the choices I made, I was stuck. Alcohol and drugs, which then again I always took a toll on me. I went to psychiatrists from one to another to dig in and find the answers where I could actually cope to see kung ano talaga, what it really was. But it never made a connection to me. And somehow that's when I'd always be on and off with a cycle. And I just realized that life is life. Even my son, I can remember how he always used to dance and sing. Every time I was stressed before, he would always say, "Life is life, ma." Da 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 da. You know, there's this song, "Life is Life." I forget the artist, but I always had that recollection of him telling me, "Mom, life is life, you know. You just gonna go." I just had no choice but to face life. And because I was stubborn, I remained stuck. And I allowed myself to remain stuck because that's where I found my comfort. And apart from that, were my kids. I've had so many suicides, three, four overdoses, and got me realizing they lost their dad, they lost their brother. I'm thankful they didn't lose me from being that weak, you know.
Yeah.
Um, and because of my kids, I have actually had the reason to keep breathing. They gave me all that reason to stay alive. So that was my support.
Certain point of life na naisip mo na i-end yung buhay mo, it's, you know how hard it is. Yun na lang yung ano dun eh. Kumbaga, it's the only escape na naisip mo. Pero yeah, like what you said, there's always a reason to keep on going. It's good na you're here, di ba? It's good. Wala akong aasa rin ng jump shot na yan. So, di ba? And yeah,
Yeah.
for the kids din, di ba? Hindi rin naman siguro, kumbaga they need you. Everything happens for a reason, ika nga. Di ba? Yun yung sinasabi nila. But yeah, punta tayo dun sa kids. For Julia and Z, so growing up, who did you confide to as you navigate grief in life such an early age? What support system do you have that you found helpful or not helpful? So anyone can start.
So, in the early ages, and honestly, up to now, it's really just been mom. I've had friends and relatives by my side, but for some reason, they'll keep coming back to my mom. She's honestly like my best friend.
Yeah.
She's the only person who by far can really understand and love me unconditionally. And obviously, my sister, who is my best frenemy, drives me nuts, but can also calm me down when things get rough.
I feel you.
Um, yeah, both my mom and my sister have honestly been the best support group ever. They've never given up on me, and at times where I don't understand people or situations, they understand and they make me calm down.
Pero meron ka bang na-experience like when it comes to support system na hindi naman naging helpful? Ba mga malumapit sa inyo pero it didn't help at all. The feeling na yung mga tao na, "Oh, kaya mo 'yan. Sige lang. Wala yan, lilipas din 'yan." Yung mga ganyan. They're
Mm.
trying to support you in a way na hindi ka talaga niya, alam mo 'yun, natutulungan.
I guess there were points that I do have people who say that you can do it, you're strong, ganito ganyan, and then I'm just like, yeah, thank you, yeah, I
'Di
know I can
ba?
do it. I'm still living up to this day, so thank you for that.
It's not
No,
really that type of support system na
yeah.
kailangan. Well, thank you so much, Z. So kay Julia tayo, same question.
In all honesty, I'd like to believe I didn't really know what the loss meant to me until I grew older. I think I was very happy-go-lucky kid, and I was like, okay, yeah, I'm great. So I had my best friend or different friend groups growing up to confide in. However, during moments or until this day, I prefer if it wasn't really added into the situation. I felt as if it were a given, and I didn't want that to equate or justify any of my actions. Obviously, my sister and I, my mom and I, also had each other. We were each other's support group. We never really talked about it much, like we mentioned earlier, but we were there for each other, going through life for them, if not myself. To expound on that, I'd want to talk about self harm, right? There were moments where it was tough and like okay, or there would be some of my friends who would tell me what they're going through and they tell me about their self harming tendencies. When I think about it, it would break mom's heart. It would break her heart, and she's already experienced enough loss. I make sure to keep myself in check because why would I want to hurt myself? All the more it would hurt my mom. It was good to know that I had such an amazing support group. I'd also believe that the opportunities I got growing up, like being involved in dance groups or choir, sports teams, art, school extracurriculars and whatnot, in general, different things and paths helped me
Mhm.
with the grief and alleviate the pain, the longing. And what didn't help though, you know how some people they negatively like they put that mindset, let's say they're going to the gym and like, oh, I'm heartbroken or I experienced this, and
Mhm.
being sad all throughout, that doesn't help me become a stronger person. For me, that makes me weaker and I tend to break down. So that did not help for me anyway whatsoever. And then there would also be times where if we're all trauma dumping or support groups, sometimes it wouldn't work for me because I felt that energy was a little draining. Like you have to be at the sense of mental stability for you to join a support group talaga. It helps, but then you have to make sure you know yourself well enough.
Kita mo Ate Steph kung gaano ka gagaling ng daughters mo, 'di
Yeah.
ba? Very inspiring eh. There are some kids who would take it really it will affect their entire lives, yung upbringing nila, 'di ba? Pero seeing these two mukhang they're in the right hands. Ate Shay, on to you,
All right. So,
'di ba?
ready now for the turning points. Directly to Ate Stephanie, this question is for you. Were there any specific moments or realizations that marked turning points in your grief journey and moments that made you feel like healing was possible?
Okay, so yeah. Looking at that, after the accident happened, so I met someone 3 years after, and this was also the reason why I relapsed. No matter how I'm not proud of what I did. I still keep on going back to that because I know that it could actually touch other people as well. I met this person, and this person was one of the major reasons that I relapsed. A lot of things affected everything from my relationship to my family to some friends because they knew that this person wasn't going to do me any good. Relapse ako ng drugs, always had the drinking problems. And when that ended, it gave me a moment to think, maybe I went through those years with this person only to be ready to conquer the rest of what my life has. Feeling I was ready. It relieved my family. It also relieved a bit of toxic stress for me because that relationship was really toxic. Because of all of that I did, it also took a toll on me, meaning that's where a heart issue came up, my diabetes and hypertension were born. Then it made me rethink things, right? And in all honesty, that was enough of warnings, chances. I've had a lot of either a heart attack or something happening that would actually bring me close to death encounter. Those were my turning points. But then again, the heaviest turning point for me was slowly as the kids grew up, Julia decides she wants to move to Manila. That's her choice, her pathway. She wanted to do her college in Manila, and I'm like, okay, just go for it, soar high. And anyways, Z is still here, back up, because my greatest fear was to be alone. And eventually, after a year, since Z took a gap year from the pandemic from nursing, she also did go through a certain depression that affected all of us. After a year of Julia moving away from home just to go to school somewhere else, we decided, okay, Z, what's the plan now? The decision was, okay, mom, I think I'll leave for Australia and I'll go to school there and work there and see what happens after that. And so, ako naman, I was like tossing and turning on that and thinking about me. But then again, I keep reminding myself that their future relies on them too, right? So I couldn't stop them from pushing forward. So I supported the whole endeavor. Finally, Z got to leave. And then I hit rock bottom. I'm alone. My support system has just left the building. And I'm like, what to do? I was over drugs years ago. And even the thought of doing drugs wasn't even something to consider anymore. I was just done with that part. Alcoholism, I had to quit that as well because my liver and the family background history is just, it's not going to help. So, okay, since I am very compassionate into helping other people, I decided, why not focus on the community? How can I help the community? I met Coach Poi and I became ACEs aware. I got a chance to listen to myself and understand myself to the point that everything I experienced in a very clear understanding was actually valid. It was my survival mode. That I'm really thankful for because that's my game changer. And it saved me from the darkest points in my life. And it didn't have to be drugs nor alcohol. So yeah, those are my turning points. I'm very, very happy to share that because in light of that everything becomes brighter.
Thanks for sharing, Ate Steph. That turning point, soon as you met Coach Boy, you said, it's almost like there was like, did it give you a sense of hope? Like parang, oh, there's an actual light at the end of the tunnel. Did you ever get that sense?
If I have to roll back again in time, even if my son was gone, my son really had a way with me and he was very animated, and because we love music and movies, he always used to tell me before when I used to get pissed when he was still alive, he would always say the sun will always come out tomorrow. That was something that always came back to me and always kept me up, even at times where I missed the longing of my husband and my son. There were things that we experienced with my son, even the way he moved or he danced. Just that memory would actually give me enough strength to, carry on. And that being said, I always knew that hope was available. I believe still unto this day that everything I went through and where I'm at now has been designed for me.
That's lovely. It's
Yeah,
very inspiring because you're showing all the parts of you.
yeah.
It is such a deeply personal story that you're sharing and just such a brave heart. Just know, Ate Steph, alam kong how nervous you are. And I feel you on this. You're so strong and just so inspiring. I'm just gonna look up to you. Like, hey, if you're here, you're just inspiring not just me, not just Javi, but whoever is listening. But why don't we move on to the next question for Zia and Julia? There's actually two questions, so you can feel free to choose either one question or answer both, whatever you can relate to. Now, as young adults, would you say that you've found some realization or turning points or an aspect in the stage of your life where you can now choose to take the responsibility or accountability to process, understand, and make sense of all that's happened in the past? Or what are the effects to you of having to lose a parent or a sibling, parents and sibling at some age?
Maybe I'll answer both. Now, as a young adult, looking back, it sometimes brings me the longingness of having a brother and a dad, because seeing my mom growing older with Julia and I away, I don't think it's good. She deserves so much more of love. As supportive as she is towards me and my sister, most especially now with the whole new image that she's holding, all that happened in the past will forever live within us as we pursue the life that is in front of us. To be honest, if I lost my dad and my brother at an older age, I think it would have been really different. Like how I know of some stories of some families who have shared their losses recently, it really must have been difficult. But in my case, I lost my dad and my brother at an early age. And having a mom who does a very amazing job, it became just like any normal day. And even if I was bullied back in grade school for being a freak for not having a dad and all my physical appearances, my mom just managed to make me believe differently. I'm unique.
Of course, you're beautiful inside out. Now to Julia.
All right, so I'll focus more on the first question because Z tackled the second one, right?
Yes.
So, in general, I think this question is a hard one, I'd like to say. Don't really know how to answer that, but in essence, really, grief, healing, and growth, as we all know through our paths in life, is not linear in any way whatsoever. There will always be setbacks, pain, and all that. I think learning to let things go and flow has helped, but there's a big difference when it comes to letting things go and flow and neglecting or ignoring that pain
Mhm.
or those feelings and emotions. Now that I'm older, I try to be more accountable, responsible, and most especially learning to be rational in terms of, again, my emotions and how I interact with others, most especially my family, my sense of self, and with those around me. Seeing life in a sense of awe and lightness is a good feeling, but also, of course, acknowledging the reality of life, not to be living in with rose tinted glasses or just in black and white. Like, it's okay to not be okay. Just don't coop yourself for too long and feel those emotions for too long. You know, um, like my brother would say, live life, right? Now I have a lot of those moments. I think as a young adult, there's a lot of frustrations you get with yourself or with things around you out of your control. And whenever I talk to mom about it, she helps me. And the the essence of living life, I think, helps me explore, learning more about myself. Don't always stick to a routine. Try to do something unique. That um, that helps. So yeah, I don't think I really answered the question. However, that's my wait. That's my take.
No, I think you did answer it to the best of your ability, and thank you for sharing that. Just sensing from what you the way you answered, I think you really have that sense of attunement to your own self. Like I keep hearing that sense of self, being aware and being mindful of um, how you respond to the things and circumstances around you. So that's helpful because I think it starts with that in terms of having to take that accountability and responsibility to process, right? It all starts with us. So at least that's what I got from your answer. So thank you for sharing that. Avi, on to you.
I really agree on that. But syempre, dun tayo, since na-experience nila to, di ba, this tragic event sa buhay nila, what advice would you give to others who are currently navigating their own journey of traumatic grief?
I'm no perfect person. Believe me, I'm not. But from my lived experience, I think that I have a little bit of wisdom to be able to feel confident to say my thoughts. And my advice would be, in the moment of grief, it's okay to not be okay. It's valid in however way you feel to survive that, to surpass that, to overcome that. Listen to yourself. That would be one of the greatest things that I wish I would have known earlier. Na for me to process everything, I was too busy listening to what others were telling me, and what really mattered was listening to me, understanding me. And so seek help, know that you're never alone and it's valid and it's okay. What's not okay is to be stuck for a long time. And the reason I say that is because I've come to a point where I wanted things to change for me. I'm totally done with being stuck. And all I want to do now is move forward. So I think, in commemoration to celebrating a 20th year death anniversary, I may not be over missing the loved ones, but I'm over being stuck with it. I'm at the point where I just want to get on with it. It doesn't have it doesn't mean that you lost and you die with it, because there's still so much to life, and moving on is the best choice. So in however way, just move forward.
Tama ka naman doon natin, Steph. It's okay not to be okay. Based sa sinabi mo, ang pinakamabigat kasi na makakalaban natin sa buhay natin is sarili natin. That's the hardest thing you can ever, kumbaga yung pakikipag-negotiate mo sa thoughts mo. Ikaw mismo eh. Ikaw mismo eh. Mindset din. Hindi lang yung puro kinig sa ibang tao. It's a good way of learning things, guidance, 'di ba? Pero ang kalaban mo talaga diyan ikaw.
Yeah,
So
that's so
yun yun.
true.
Kaya it's okay not to be okay. At yung sinabi mo nga, life moves forward. Forward lang, wag tayo atras.
Yeah.
Dire-diretso lang. Di ba? Kasi ang sarap mabuhay. Okay,
Yes,
sobra. Di
truly.
ba?
Truly.
Hindi ko sinasabi to dahil wala akong problema.
Yeah.
Everybody has a lot of problems, pero you can still see them smiling. There's always battles, pero yun nga, like what you said, you stop being stuck. And it's good to hear that from you and seeing you here, di ba? Just another chapter of your life at this time. Yeah, yun lang naman. Thank you so much for answering.
Yes, impact on relationships. We may have touched part of it. I think earlier I think I heard some answers with regards to this. But is there anything that we can add? So how did your experience impact your relationship with others? Were there challenges, and how did you overcome them? So let's start with at this Steph.
Challenges were all over the place. The challenge of the layers of grief that I experienced in life, not just of a loss of a loved one, but of surviving the trauma itself. Everyone has a story, kahit all the way back to childhood. So if it's challenges, talagang there were a lot of challenges. It was a constant battle, to be honest, on and off. But as I realized the pattern, and as I learned so much of the tools for hope, how the techniques are for self-regulate, there's just so much of understanding that made so much sense to me. And I think one of the reasons why I am still strong today is because of love. I've had this capacity to love so much that it even went to a point where I went overboard, loving too much for other people and forgetting myself. And now that um, I have overcome all of those challenges, I feel that all the love that I have for myself, to loving others, to loving life, and to loving just love.
I love that answer. I think you're from what you're saying that you let love guide you in making your decisions moving
Yes.
forward, and
Yes.
that's just truly beautiful. Thank you for sharing. Now to Z and Julia, pretty much same question, but how did your experience impact your relationship with your mom or others? And were there any challenges and how did you overcome them?
The whole experience has, up to this day, created a bond or connection with my mom deeply.
Mhm.
And of course, there were challenges, such as she couldn't hide being drunk when she was an alcoholic. But this obviously happened later on in life. When she did drugs before, we didn't even know what the effects were like because obviously we were too young. Again, she did this later on in life. And looking back at those times, now that I'm older, I appreciate how she took care of us in spite being under the influence. Looking back, it makes me so proud of how everything has just changed for the better because honestly, there came a point where my mom's health was greatly affected.
Thank you, Julia. You want to answer that?
So for me naman, not going to lie, my mom and I had a rough patch for a little while there. In a sense that growing up, there were some choices I didn't entirely agree with, and since I was younger at the time, I kept more to myself. I always loved my mom through it, and still do. However, we just had those moments where we weren't that close. She never neglected me. I want y'all to know that she did not. It was more me. I kept a distance in a sense because the choices she made, of the love she gave out, I felt she deserved way more for herself, to love and value herself more than others. In some sense, I think maybe selfishly, I felt that those people didn't deserve the love that she gave because she loved wholeheartedly. So, because of that kind of love and um, emotion she would feel for other people, I didn't agree with it. So, there was like a divide. There Later on, I told her everything, how I felt. I apologized for how I acted, most especially growing up to be a little avoidant. And now, the past how many years we've been tight, we've been besties, and I love her unconditionally, not just because she's my mom, but because she's as courageous as they get.
Thank you for sharing that.
In what ways do you think resilience played a role in your ability to move forward and find hope?
Different strokes for different folks. I was finally at the age that I hold now, which I'm proud of. Um, I was able to identify when enough was enough. I may not have made all the right choices, but either way, I made it through. I made myself aware in ways I could comprehend and feel safe and comfortable to. And I was always adaptable to change. I always believed in the benefit of the doubt and always having that. There's just something about me na no matter how ugly things get, I always see it on the other side, because for me life is a balance, you know. There's never a perfect life and there's never a bad life. It's up to you how you want to be in between. And because of
Yeah.
that, I think it just made sense.
Z and Julia. So ito very basic lang naman, di ba? How did being trauma-informed help you as a young adult?
I think it was ACEs that really made a difference
ACEs.
on how I see things now because it made me understand how the past can affect the present, and understanding it would make a huge difference because it can affect us people in many ways, like emotionally. It's ACEs that helped me.
Talagang nagtatali ang dalawang yan. Thank you so much, Z. Si Julia. Julia, what can you say about this?
Well, for me personally, I see that there's still a long way to go for me in my journey. But with how I see the effects it has on people around me, evidently enough like my mom, for example, I see hope in the future and for those who are willing to work on themselves.
Kung isipin mo, it's always hope eh. Yun eh. For everything na nangyari, it's always hope. As long as you have that, at nabanggit nga ni Ate Steph, pag may love, may hope. So, hindi naman nawawala ang love natin. So, alam naman natin yan. So, it's just the right timing, kumbaga. Diba? Wala yung timeline. Kaya, thank you so much, Zia and Julia. Yeah, siguro let's go to creating a new normal, Ate Shay.
Yes, creating a new normal. So, since nabanggit rin naman natin yung love and hope, I think we can kind of use that concept to focus on the next question. So, for Ate Steph, how have you worked towards creating a new normal for yourself? And what does life look like now? And how is it different from before the accident?
Not that I want to sound cheesy, but it just it just worked for me. So if whatever comes out of my mouth, it just worked for me. It may not work the same for other people, but because it worked so much for me, I believe so much in it. And coming into UDRiVe saved me from the darkest bit of every pain I can think of in my whole entire life. It's the second best thing that happened having raised two strong troopers. You know what I mean? Um, it gave me the chance and opportunity to see things to a different level, such a game changer. And I have fallen in love with trauma informed care. I'm so proud to be ACEs aware. It makes a lot of sense to it all. I never thought that anything could connect to me until I met the salutogenic approach. That made a difference for me. And because of that, my new normal is just going to get better. So, yes, thank you so much.
Thank you. We look forward to more of this normal and healing journey with you. So, hugs. Hugs. Now, next question is for Zia and Julia. How would you give yourself permission when grief strikes? And what would be your outlet for expressing this grief?
I think I'll keep it short and simple, but it's honestly just being mindful, understanding, and regulated enough to talk about it in ways to bring a better sense of direction.
Thank you. Short and sweet. But yes, very to the point. I like that. What about you, Julia?
Right, mine's a little different. To be brutally honest, I would be lying if I told you it was all rainbows and sunshine and all whatnot. But when moments like that strike me, I sometimes turn to or would want to take a drink. However, you know, I wouldn't believe I'm not an alcoholic in what way whatsoever. It's just that sometimes when those emotions emerge, it's a little prominent. However, I'm trying to restrain myself from it and be more rational. However, now isolating works sometimes. Staying by myself, going to the gym, taking a walk or a run, or be with some kind of nature, whether it's as mundane as walking by a park or extremes like hiking and scuba diving and all that. It calms my mind a lot. And the serenity of places as such remind me that the world is infinite and we are merely just tiny, tiny, tiny little aspects to this life. So it helps bring me back to earth and humbles me as well. Some problems and emotions don't have to be that big, but don't invalidate yourself as well.
Thank you. Like we mentioned from our previous podcast, or just in this podcast alone too, we mentioned that grief is very unique to everyone. So however that looks like for you, whether taking a nature walk, that I can relate to that too. You just find that sense of solace and just like being with yourself, that in itself is a way to cope and ways of an expression of grief. So thank you.
Ate Steph, I've been wanting to ask you this sa totoo lang. Di ba? Dito tayo sa, ano nga ba nag-motivate sa'yo to share this story? Di ba? Ano ang nag-push sa'yo? How do you see the role of storytelling in your healing process, both for yourself and others?
Looking back, I remember one of the books that um, Carlos was reading. I actually was stuck on that book and the whole idea. I never got to read it, to be honest, because of all the pain that I've been through. I was just an angry bird who would want to keep everything within me because I didn't want to show what a monster I was, right? But because of that, it got me thinking, what is the purpose of my life? Recently, in the last few years, I've been trying to process that because of a lot of traumas or traumatic events that have happened in the past. I was led to that light. And now I have been so inspired to share my story because there's no one to blame, there's no one to shame, and there's really nothing to be afraid of. I just thought that finally to be brave enough to share my story would give some light to others who may actually resonate to it or not, or by sharing the story I get feedback and then I get to learn even more. I'm just done with the cycle and I want to change everything, and if telling my story would help, then why not?
Tsaka ano naman Ate Steph, we know naman na at one point in life, 'di ba, na we have to let it out with the
Yeah.
right people, 'di ba? With the right people, if you know what I mean. It helps. Malaking ano 'yan eh, malaking bagay talaga 'yan na you find a group or a bunch na who would actually listen and understand you, 'di
Yes,
ba?
that is so
So
true.
I hope you found those people.
I'm it's right there.
Uh, right there. Wala eh. Hindi ko sorry. I'm very sorry.
Sorry.
I'm very
Sorry, but
sorry.
And
this is my
Oo.
truth. I'm sorry, this is my truth. I'm sorry.
So malaki talaga naging impact ng UDRiVe sa buhay mo. Thank you so much for sharing that. Ate Shea, lumalapit na tayo. Lumalapit na tayo sa
towards the end
ah,
of the tunnel.
yes. 2 hours later, yung maramdaman, 'di ba? Hindi nyo iisipin na ganun kahaba na tayo nag-uusap. It's very ano lang eh. It's a normal conversation kung tutuusin. It's not
It's
it's
true.
not a podcast na lahat na nakalista and
Mhm.
all. We're just trying to hear her out, them out, 'di ba?
Just for closing thoughts, at the Stephanie, Z, or Julia, do you have anything else that you'd like to share, or any message, just general message you want to convey to those who may be going through similar experiences? Just, last thoughts, comments.
Well, all I can actually say, simple, is you're never alone. You are valid. You are loved. And all you need is within you. You are enough. Do you.
Yes.
You'll be fine.
Amen. Amen.
Nakuha
Yun
ko
ang
yun.
masasabi ko.
I'm gonna grab that and put it in my heart.
Yeah, parang nag-e-echo yung boses ni Ate Steph sa ulo ko eh. Naririnig ko eh. Alam mo yun?
Yes.
Oo.
Any comments, Z, Julia?
I would just like to say, especially to those children who's growing up with single parents, is to support and be there for your parent because they've gone through hell just to put you where you are now, and love them like there's no tomorrow because you never know when the time's gonna come.
Yeah.
And to those single parents out there, thank you so much for all you do. You are incredibly amazing. Thank you.
Lovely.
Well, they both said it, right? What else is there to say? But yeah, I think in essence, just try seeing it in a different light. Live life in on lightness, despite everything that's happened. So yeah, take it day by day, easy, breathe it out. Yeah, you'll get through it.
Thank you. Thank you so
Thank you.
much. Before we end, just want to again say thank you for sharing your deeply personal story to all of us who's listening, who's watching. Your experience, all this, tragic experiences, the joy, the love, the hope, the encouragement, everything that you've shared, the pain and the hope that you've shared are so valued. And not only that, it's a way for your family to commemorate your losses, but also to shed light to your story in hopes to help you process and contextualize your grief, as well as a source of hope for others in grief. We are so honored to have you all three here with us today. So we are so grateful. That concludes for today's episode. Definitely, what a moving conversation that we've had. We've just heard the three extraordinary journey from the wreckage of tragedy to the inspiring rebirth of a survivor from our Ate Stephanie, Z, and Julia.
Yes.
So thank you for sharing your resilience and strength.
And usually si Ate Steph nagsasabi nito. But
Mhm.
if you've been moved by today's story, or know someone who could find solace and inspiration in Stephanie, Z, and Julia's experience, consider sharing this episode. Sometimes a shared story can be a beacon of hope for someone in need. Kaya maraming salamat.
Yes, and to our listeners and viewers, life's challenges can sometimes feel wrecks beyond repair. But remember, just as Ate Stephanie, Z, and Julia showed us today, there can be rebirth and renewal after the darkest times.
If you know someone is grappling with the aftermath of trauma, mga kapatid, reach out to the support systems around you. Marami yan. Sino ba, Ate Steph? Yung mga t-shirt nyo, ang gaganda, oh. Pakita niyo yung mga t-shirt nyo. Ayan, UDRiVe group of coaches, mga kapatid, at Step Forward Support Group. You can visit us sa Facebook and dito sa YouTube. Don't forget to subscribe. UDRiVe Group.
Thank you for being part of this journey with us. Your time and empathy means the world. So, as we close today's episode, we look forward to bringing you more stories of resilience and renewal. Remember, in the wreckage of life, there can be a rebirth. Until next time, take care of yourself and each other. This is Shay, and with my co host, Tavi, signing off from Embrace the Echo Grief Talks. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.